They stole 12 years of my life in 7 minutes, and with that final smirk, I swore I'd smear ashes across her perfect smile. The storm outside wasn't half as violent as the one brewing inside me. Rain battered against the tall windows of my high-rise apartment, a relentless percussion that echoed through the empty living room. I sat there in the dark, the only light a dim glow from my laptop screen. 8 p.m. sharp. The meeting invite had said, Strategic Realignment Discussion. A polite corporate euphemism for exactly what it was, a firing squad dressed in silk blouses and tailored suits. I adjusted my tie out of sheer habit. God, old instincts die hard. The connection chimed, and there she was. Victoria Kane. Her image flickered onto the screen like a phantom I hadn't invited in, poised, flawless, a smile that could curdle fresh cream. She was everything the board worshipped, young, ruthless, and utterly unburdened by the weight of anything resembling a conscience. Mr. Carter, she began, her voice syrup-sweet but laced with something metallic underneath, thank you for joining. I'll keep this brief. And brief it was. In exactly 7 minutes, she dismantled 12 years of my life like it was nothing more than an outdated spreadsheet. Your role, Mr. Carter, doesn't align with Triumph's new corporate vision, she said, her eyes scanning something just off camera. Not me, never me. With your experience, she emphasized the word like a curse, perhaps it's time to explore opportunities more suitable to your talents. A consultancy, maybe? Or, something more relaxed. Then came the final blow, laced in mockery so casual it could have passed for concern. With that level of expertise, you might find a better fit somewhere quieter. Perhaps, a retirement home? My fist clenched under the desk so tightly my knuckles went pale. I didn't flinch. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me crack. Understood, I replied, my voice colder than the rain lashing the windows. What's the timeline for transition? Effective immediately, she smiled. That smile, sharp, satisfied, lethal. The screen went black. And just like that, it was over. I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling, hearing nothing but the storm and the low hum of my own breath. My eyes drifted to the far wall where an old photograph hung slightly askew, me and Edward Grant, back when this company was nothing but a dream crammed into a converted warehouse. His arm was thrown across my shoulder, both of us laughing like the world couldn't touch us. What a joke. I stood up slowly, knees aching from years bent over desks and development benches, walked over, and pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window. The city lights blurred against the sheets of rain. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, something colder settled into my chest. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. 3 days after that stormy night, I found myself sitting at the same desk, a half-empty glass of bourbon sweating onto the stack of papers before me. But this time, I wasn't brooding. I was hunting. The non-compete clause, Triumph's supposed ironclad shield against any retaliation, wasn't a shield at all. It was a cracked dam, one good hit away from bursting wide open. Their legal team had rushed through the acquisition paperwork like college interns on a caffeine binge. Sloppy. Careless. They'd tried to bind me with vague language and unenforceable regional restrictions. Amateurs. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. The bourbon burned a trail down my throat, but it couldn't match the fire building inside my chest. Triumph thought they'd buried me. They didn't realize they'd planted a damn landmine. And Meridian Energy Group? That was the match I needed to light the fuse. Meridian wasn't just a client, they were the crown jewel. Their grid management system was so uniquely tailored that Red Forge spent 4 years building it, 4 years I bled for. Now, Triumph was promising them a seamless integration into their archaic architecture. I almost laughed. Their system couldn't even handle basic adaptive load balancing, let alone the real-time predictive analytics Meridian required to avoid rolling blackouts. It wasn't a question of if Triumph would fail them. It was when. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. If I was going to burn Triumph to the ground, I wouldn't do it alone. I'd bring the best with me, the ones who built the empire before those corporate vultures picked it clean. Ethan Brooks answered on the second ring. Nathan. His voice was as sharp as ever, cool and precise like a surgeon's scalpel. Took you long enough. You still interested in building something real? I asked. There was a pause, and then the sound of a cigarette being lit. Tell me when and where. One down. Grace Miller was next. She didn't answer immediately, but by the time I poured a second bourbon, a single encrypted message arrived, let's talk. Usual place. Midnight. Grace didn't waste words. She didn't have to. She knew things before they hit the rumor mills. If Triumph was hiding skeletons, she already knew where the graves were. Logan Hayes was trickier. A silver-tongued dealmaker with a reputation for switching sides when the winds changed. But even snakes have their uses, if you know how to hold them by the neck. Logan, I started when he picked up. I figured you'd call eventually, he drawled. Listen, I'm not looking for redemption. Good, I cut in. I'm not offering any. Just a shot at revenge. And a fat stack of cash if you don't screw it up. His low chuckle came through the line. Now you're speaking my language. Frank Turner was the easiest call of all. The old man had been my mentor, my moral compass when I still believed loyalty mattered in this business. He didn't even let me finish the pitch. About damn time, Nathan, he said. I've been waiting for you to remember who you are. That left one. Avery Monroe. Brilliant. Dangerous. And the closest thing to a daughter I ever had. At 26, she'd already architected AI frameworks that people twice her age couldn't even conceptualize. But her ambition, it scared me sometimes. When she answered, her voice was bright, almost amused. Are we finally burning the house down, Uncle Nate? I swallowed hard at the nickname. Yeah, kid. It's time. Her answer was immediate. I'm in. By the end of that week, we gathered in the back room of a rundown bar downtown. The air smelled of stale whiskey and old regrets. But as I looked around that dimly lit room, at the faces of the people who had once helped me build an empire from nothing, I felt something I hadn't in weeks, purpose. We're starting over, I told them, rolling out the blueprint on the scarred wooden table. And we're not just building a company. We're building the company that'll make Triumph regret ever crossing us. I paused, looking each of them in the eyes. They called it Triumph, I continued. But we're going to show them the real meaning of victory. We rise from the ashes they left us in. This isn't about surviving. This is about conquering. Grace tapped the table with a perfectly manicured finger. What's the first target? Meridian, I said, the word like a shot of adrenaline through the room. We know their systems better than anyone. We know exactly when Triumph's promises will start to crack. And when they do? Ethan asked, his expression stone cold. I smiled. Cold. Calculated. We'll be there with the only real solution before the bodies even hit the floor. And just like that, Pinnacle Dynamics was born. Not from hope. Not from dreams. But from fire, betrayal, and a hunger for revenge that none of us would deny. We called it Operation Phoenix, because some things don't just rise from the ashes. They rise to burn the world down. The call came just past midnight, as I sat alone in my apartment overlooking the rain-slicked streets of downtown. The city was asleep, but my mind wasn't. It hadn't been for weeks. The phone buzzed once. Unknown number. I stared at it for a second before answering. A voice, low and smooth, cut through the static. Don't let that hatred rot you from the inside, Nathan. Turn it into a blade. And when it's sharp enough, drive it straight through their heart. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stood there, The phone pressed against my ear, heart pounding like it knew something I didn't. Then the screen lit up again. This time, it was a simple text. Grand Marlowe Hotel. Room 1712, 3 a.m. Come alone. The Grand Marlowe wasn't just a hotel, it was a fortress. A place where deals were made behind closed doors and fortunes changed hands under the dim glow of overpriced scotch and lies. I didn't hesitate. By 2:45 a.m., I was in the elevator, the weight of my decision pressing heavier with every floor. The corridor of the 17th floor was wrapped in an eerie hush, thick carpeting swallowing the sound of my footsteps. Room 1712 stood at the end. The door opened before I could knock. And there she was, Scarlett Blake. The former CFO of Triumph. The woman who'd vanished from the corporate scene 6 months ago like smoke through a crack in the wall. And now I knew why. She stood by the window, framed by the city lights. Her long red hair fell over one shoulder, a silk robe clinging to her like a dangerous secret. "Scarlett," I said cautiously. She turned slowly, a knowing smile playing at the corner of her lips. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, like she'd already lived through every move I might make and decided which version of me she preferred. "I see you got my message," she said, motioning me inside. I didn't sit. Neither did she. This wasn't a meeting. It was a negotiation written in blood and regret. Without another word, she crossed the room to a small safe tucked behind a painting, cliché, but effective. She keyed in a code and retrieved a small, matte black USB drive. She held it between two fingers like it was a loaded weapon. "This," she said, her voice low and deliberate, "is the kill switch." I frowned. "What's on it?" Her eyes locked on mine, hard and unforgiving. "Everything. Triumph's sins, laid bare. Cross-border money laundering through shell corporations. Bribes to government officials to secure no-bid energy contracts. Off-the-books slush funds used to silence whistleblowers and regulators. And, perhaps most interesting to you, documents proving clear and deliberate breaches of contract with their biggest partners, including Meridian." My pulse thundered in my ears. "Why me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why now?" She walked closer, standing just inches away. The air between us felt electric, charged with old grudges and dangerous possibilities. "Because I'm done hiding," she said, her voice like silk over a blade. "I built Triumph's financial empire with my own hands, Nathan. And when Victoria Kane saw a chance to cut me out, she didn't just throw me to the wolves, she made damn sure those wolves knew my scent." She pressed the USB into my palm, her fingers lingering for a beat longer than necessary. "This is my way back," she whispered. "And your way forward. But understand this." Her gaze turned ice cold. "Once you open that drive, there's no walking away. No forgiveness. No redemption. You'll either destroy her or she'll destroy you. And she won't play fair." I swallowed hard, the weight of that tiny device heavier than any weapon I'd ever held. "What's your endgame, Scarlett?" A slow, humorless smile spread across her lips. "I want to watch her burn. And I want you to light the match." The clock on the nightstand flashed 3:16 a.m. somewhere far below. The city rumbled with a passing freight train, a low, mournful sound that seemed to stretch across the walls of that dimly lit room. I slipped the USB into my jacket pocket. The cold metal burned against my skin like a promise etched in steel. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me one last time. "And Nathan." I glanced back. "When the time comes, don't hesitate. People like Victoria Kane, they only fear one thing, absolute, unapologetic annihilation. Be that fear." I left without another word. Back in my apartment, the USB sat on the coffee table like a live grenade. My fingers hovered over it, the weight of choice pressing down harder than ever before. This was it, the point of no return. And God help me, I'd never felt more alive. I didn't open the USB that night. Not yet. That's the thing about revenge, timing isn't just important, it's everything. The next morning, the first salvo hit. A formal notice from Triumph's legal department, filed directly with the federal court. Allegations of intellectual property theft, industrial espionage, and violation of non-compete clauses. The kind of legal grenade that doesn't just kill your momentum, it obliterates your financial backing. By noon, every major bank we dealt with had mysteriously tightened credit lines or flat-out frozen our accounts. Pinnacle's operational funds were locked up in red tape, our cash flow choked out before we could even react. Victoria Kane wasn't just playing hardball. She was playing for blood. At 3 p.m., Grace Miller stormed into my office, her eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. "We've got a leak," she said, dropping a slim file on my desk. "And you're not gonna like who it is." I flipped through the documents, my chest tightening with every line. Internal memos, private communications, even upcoming contract proposals, all of it had found its way into Triumph's hands over the last 2 weeks. Logan Hayes. The bastard was still playing both sides. Grace crossed her arms, waiting for my reaction. I stared out the window for a long moment before standing. "Bring him in," I said. Logan showed up 15 minutes later, his usual slick confidence worn thin. "Relax, Nathan," he started before I could say a word. "It's just business." My fist slammed into his jaw before he could finish. He stumbled back against the wall, wiping blood from his lip with that same smirk he always wore when he thought he was the smartest man in the room. "You think this is a negotiation?" I growled. "You're either in, or you're out. But if you're out, I swear to God, you'll wish you'd never heard my name." For the first time since I'd known him, Logan Hayes looked scared. He swallowed hard. "What do you want me to do?" I straightened my jacket, the anger boiling off me like heat from a furnace. "You're going to fix this. You're going to use those snake oil talents of yours and get our accounts unfrozen. And when you're done, you're going to walk straight into Triumph's legal department and deliver a message from me." His voice cracked slightly. "And, what message is that?" I leaned in close, my words low and final. "Tell Victoria Kane the storm she started is about to drown her." Logan left pale and silent. Good. But the real storm was still brewing. The next morning was supposed to be our victory lap, Pinnacle's final contract signing with Meridian Energy. Years of work, risk, and sacrifice were about to pay off in one room, in front of the world's press. That's when she made her move. The conference hall was packed with industry leaders, media outlets, and representatives from every corner of the energy sector. And right before I stepped onto the stage, I saw them. Victoria Kane, descending the marble staircase like the queen of a crumbling empire. And at her side, standing tall and proud, was Avery Monroe. My stomach clenched like a fist around a knife. She'd betrayed me. The girl I'd mentored, protected, and trusted like my own blood, standing next to the very woman who'd gutted everything we'd built. She took the microphone before I could even react. "Ladies and gentlemen," Avery's voice rang through the hall, cool and confident, "I'm proud to announce that Triumph Energy's advanced AI division will be spearheading the future of energy management solutions. Effective immediately." I stepped forward, forcing the rage back into the steel wall I'd learned to build over the years. She turned to me then, her eyes glittering like frost under the harsh lights. "Uncle Nate," she said into the mic, her voice carrying across the stunned silence. "I never learned to forgive like you. But I did learn how to win." A smattering of nervous applause broke out, unsure which way the tide would turn. Victoria stood there, smiling that same venom-laced smile she'd worn the day she fired me. But this time, I smiled back. Because while they'd been busy playing their little power games, I'd been preparing the final blow. I stepped up to the podium, calm and measured, every eye in the room on me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, reaching into my jacket and pulling out the USB Scarlet Blake had given me. I held it up between two fingers. Before we continue with the day's agenda, I think the world deserves to know the truth about Triumph Energy. Murmurs rippled through the room. Cameras turned toward me like flowers toward sunlight. I inserted the USB into the presentation system. On the massive screen behind me, the first slide appeared. Confidential, Triumph Energy Financial Crimes Investigation. Line after line scrolled across the screen: bank transfers through shadow companies, bribery payouts to foreign officials, blatant violations of federal and international commerce laws. The final slide hit the room like a thunderclap. Projected class action lawsuits and government sanctions, Q4 estimates, $1.7 billion in liabilities. By the time I turned back to the audience, half the executives were already checking their stock portfolios. The other half were quietly slipping out the back doors. Victoria Kane didn't move. She stood there, paralyzed, her perfect facade cracking for the first time. And Avery? She turned toward me slowly, the cold confidence draining from her face. I wasn't finished. While Triumph was busy violating every code of ethics known to modern business, I continued, clicking to the final presentation slide. Pinnacle Dynamics was building the future. Behind me, the new platform lit up the screen: real-time analytics, adaptive grid technology, AI-driven predictive modeling. Systems Triumph couldn't dream of matching for at least 5 years. In 2 weeks, I said, my voice cutting through the stunned silence, Pinnacle will launch this platform globally. And we've already signed 3 of Triumph's largest former partners, including Meridian Energy. The room erupted in chaos. By that night, Triumph's stock had plummeted 43%. By the end of the week, it hit historic lows, triggering emergency audits and federal investigations. And Victoria Kane? She vanished from the public eye within 48 hours. But before she disappeared, she left me one last message, delivered through Logan Hayes, of all people. This isn't over. I smiled when I heard it. Because she was wrong. It was over. And I had won. It didn't take long for the headlines to start rolling in. Federal grand jury indicts Victoria Kane on multiple counts of financial fraud. Triumph Energy facing $1.7 billion in fines, assets to be liquidated. I read every one of them with the same detached calm I'd perfected over the years. Victoria Kane, the untouchable, the queen of the boardroom, now faced 25 years in federal prison. And she knew it. Her carefully curated public image dissolved overnight. The penthouses, the media darling interviews, the business magazine covers, they all evaporated like smoke in a rainstorm. Her last known public sighting was a grainy security photo leaving a law office in D.C., flanked by 2 stone-faced federal agents. Triumph Energy didn't survive the fallout. The empire was torn apart in a frenzy of asset stripping and emergency sales. Their prized energy contracts were auctioned off like souvenirs at a going-out-of-business sale. I watched, almost clinically, as the corporation that had once crushed me was reduced to a series of dissolving subsidiaries and fire sale announcements. But not everyone fell with them. Avery Monroe emerged from the wreckage, of course. She always knew how to land on her feet. It wasn't Triumph she saved, it was herself. Within a month, she took the helm of a new AI tech startup funded by a shadowy consortium of international investors. She wore her betrayal like a badge of honor, but there was something missing behind her sharp, carefully staged public appearances. The industry knew what she'd done. No one openly challenged her rise, but the admiration was gone. In every corner of the tech world, people whispered the same thing: she sold her soul and left it smoldering in the ashes of her old life. I ran into her once, at a private tech summit 6 months later. We stood on opposite sides of the rooftop terrace, the city lights of San Francisco stretching endlessly between us. She raised her glass toward me in a silent, mocking toast. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. But while they faced their own versions of defeat, I couldn't escape mine. It came in a small white envelope, addressed in handwriting I recognized immediately. My ex-wife, Melissa. Inside, a wedding invitation, simple, elegant, final. She was remarrying in the spring. There was no note, no explanation. Just closure. The kind I wasn't sure I deserved. And then came the final blow. An email from my daughter, Claire. I read it a dozen times, hoping the words would change if I stared long enough. Dad, I hope you're happy now. You got everything you wanted. But you lost everything that mattered. I don't want to be the daughter of a man who only knows how to destroy things. Please, don't contact me again. She didn't sign it with love. She didn't sign it at all. That was the moment it hit me. You can win the war. You can level the battlefield and salt the earth behind you. But sometimes, the cost of victory is everything you were fighting for in the first place. And Logan Hayes? Gone. Vanished like a ghost in the aftermath. No trace. No word. Just silence. I don't know if he skipped town to avoid Triumph's remaining legal hounds or if he simply couldn't live with the things he'd done. Either way, he became another ghost in my ever-growing gallery of regrets. Now, I stand here, alone, on the rooftop of Pinnacle Dynamics. The city stretches before me, alive and glittering. The skyline we conquered now lies at my feet. Towers of glass and steel rise like monuments to ambition, their reflections scattered across the bay. But in all that brilliance, I feel nothing but cold. The wind bites through my coat, sharp and relentless, much like the life I'd carved out for myself. This isn't the victory I imagined. There's no satisfaction here. Only a hollow kind of triumph, the kind that echoes back at you in empty rooms. I step closer to the edge, staring down at the streets far below. People are moving, living, laughing, fighting, all oblivious to the silent wars fought in boardrooms and back alleys. My phone buzzes. A text from Frank Turner, short and to the point. Take a walk, son. Don't stand too long at the edge. I almost laugh. Even now, Frank knows me better than I know myself. The truth is, I don't want to jump. I'm not that kind of broken. But God help me, I don't know how to climb down either. I tilt my head back, closing my eyes against the biting wind. And somewhere, deep in the corners of my mind, I hear Edward Grant's voice, steady, wise, and impossibly distant. We build to create, Nathan, not to destroy. Never forget that. I exhale, my breath turning to mist and disappearing into the night. I won, Edward. But somewhere along the way, I think I lost myself. The wind carries the words away before they fully leave my lips. And for the first time in months, I don't try to fight the silence. I just stand there, letting it swallow me whole.